Hey everybody, welcome to Dialog Choices Podcast episode. I'm still waiting for it to load. Episode 81, I think. Right? Yeah.
It is an
We're playing
episode.
chicken on
us
who
go.
was going to start the podcast.
I always think that's what happens, and then it's Keith and I.
Midway through, I had a moment of thinking I should name the podcast episode, and then I realized I didn't have the tab open. It was taking time to load, so I was making a whole mess. It's not a game of chicken, Colonel. I'm pausing because you have to make sure that you have time for the file to start recording correctly, or it might just the episode might just open with podcast. like the first 10 seconds is cut out because it didn't actually start recording yet, and then that's just all I have to work with. So
the amount of times I see stuff like that in super high production channels and stuff. Like,
oh no,
have you ever seen those videos where they're
like for as shoddy as our production is, I've seen so many podcasts that are just have appalling episodes that they somehow put out, and I'm like, who did you check even for a moment what this sounded like? Because there's to call out Bad Boys Some More News, their podcast Even More News, when I first tuned into it, every episode for a month was auto duct or something like that, where one person talking would, or something about there was just some kind of absolutely insane noise gating or auto ducking going on where people's voices were just fading in and out constantly, and that's the whole production. So it's what is this? This is actually frustrating every second of the podcast, and they put it out, and it kept happening for multiple episodes. I'm like, guys, please stop. And those people,
sometimes it's not a matter of them not listening to the end result. It's just that people have wildly different
ideas of what's good, essentially.
Yeah. For example, I cannot stand panned voice, or stereo voices where one voice is to one left or to one side of the channel, and I can't.
Early sad games. Every episode we were mixed to being the two of us on either ear, and Andrew just kept it that way for a year.
That's the worst thing, and it's a good thing I have tools to make it not do that on my computer, but most people can't, and if I were most people, I would not watch those. In fact, recently there's the Overwatch League thing going on, or World Championship. Portugal has done terribly. Go Portugal. But in every Overwatch streamer just does a watch along and releases videos, and they just talk over the broadcasters, and it's incomprehensible. I cannot understand what anybody is saying, not the broadcasters, not the streamers. How can you listen to this? I mean, I understand how you can listen to it. If you're a native speaker, you're having multiple people speak at the same time probably doesn't confuse you as much as me. Also, probably if you listen to things at the default speed and not twice the speed, it probably helps.
I mean, it's an extremely rough experience if anybody does a reaction style thing where they're talking over somebody else that's talking in the reaction thing, and then it's just my signals are extremely mixed. It's why in most of our showcase videos where we watch the Xbox show or whatever, I end up mixing the video's audio, the recording's audio down to negative 22 decibels, just so it doesn't fight at all, because if it's loud enough at all, any level of speech in any part of the video will just scramble brains.
Yeah, and also our reaction material is not meant to replace the original. If you want to watch the original trailers or the original broadcasts, in particular for the Overwatch League thing, just go watch the originals, not the reaction. So it's just ducking it is, or not ducking it, but lowering the volume is a good thing. But I'm sorry. Why? Did we go on a tangent already from Twitter?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, thank you.
Instantly. We didn't introduce Twitter as a topic.
No, we didn't. Yeah, let's go back. Let's reset.
The listeners don't know what you mean, because the act of starting the podcast became its own 5-minute discussion, as it does every episode. Let's not be surprised.
Oh, right. We were introducing the topic before we started recording, and then we need to do it again.
But the news of the week is that Elon Musk just dumped all over Twitter again. He just actively actively mismanages the entire project every day. There's just no good news, all bad news all the time. The end. It's all that's ever happening. Like it's astonishing. But the latest thing is that a bunch of people woke up and used Twitter like normal, and then if they were lucky, they saw somebody, let's be honest, screenshotting Elon Musk or something, because most of us have blocked him by now, so his news doesn't reach us directly anyway. But it's if you didn't even see the screenshot, then you would just be greeted with a broken Twitter and not know why. Because what happens is after you use Twitter for a while, suddenly you just stop getting messages. You just stop seeing tweets. It literally, the one thing that the whole website is just stops, and you get a blank page and it says you're rate limited. Try again later. Please try again later. And by later, they mean like tomorrow, but they don't tell you that, and they don't tell you what rate limited means. And like, in fact, just universally, this is a problem with Elon Musk and his entire way of handling Twitter. Like, we're just disregarding all of the mistakes he's making and all the mess of like how everyone's panicking, thinking the website's going to disappear tomorrow every like month or so for the last year. Even disregarding all that stuff, there's just the simple fact that like Twitter doesn't have a news system for telling you changes on Twitter. Like Twitter does not communicate things that happen on Twitter. Elon Musk's approach to communicating site-wide functionality changing is to just hope you follow him on Twitter. That's the way you're supposed to receive the information, apparently.
Yeah.
So like the website itself does not explain what's happening. So for a huge percentage of casual users, you're just going to scroll Twitter for a while, and then after 5 minutes, it's just going to stop giving you new tweets. And then Twitter just seemingly
is it literally
broken.
5 minutes?
It can easily be 5 minutes, because what's happening is that because I'm trying to introduce this instead of being in the order that would make sense for like explaining the concept. I'm trying to do it in the order of like how people are actually experiencing it, which is the worst way. If you see the tweet,
it's what
then
matters.
you see the announcement that we're rate limited to 500 to 600 tweets per day, not made but seen, that we can see by other people in total, including our own tweets and including things we don't want to see. And I believe even including like, I think if you look at a tweet and its reply is full of shitty blue check marks you don't even want to see tweets from, I think all those count towards your 600 total also. So like 600 sounds like a big number if it was like, oh, I read 600 forum posts today. But on Twitter, an infinite scrolling app full of replies, that's like minutes. Like it's comical how fast that number would add up if you think about it. And so like it's such a, considering that almost every website is designed to make you stay on it forever, this is Twitter essentially saying like you could come visit me for 5 minutes a day and then I kick you out for the rest of the day. Is that set up?
Yeah. A bigger issue there is that Twitter will load tweets underneath the tweets that you're actually reading anyway.
Yeah.
So you can hit that limit without you actually reading that many. And so this actually gets to what the core of this problem is, which has been coming out slowly over the past few days as people have investigated it. Elon Musk put out a statement that said, we're doing this to prevent data scraping, which is happening. So he's framing it around this narrative that he has of like, we're introducing Twitter Blue to get rid of bots, and we're trying to prevent bots and API abuse. Actually, Twitter, before Elon bought it, made a huge deal with Google for Google's cloud hosting, and it was a $1 billion deal. And Elon allegedly just
$1 billion
doesn't.
a year.
Yes, Elon allegedly just did not want to pay it, so he didn't. So Twitter is now not functional because it can't call requests. It's unable to request the data on the server as people are refreshing the app.
Because Google has rate limited Twitter.
Yes,
they didn't pay the bill.
Google exactly has rate
They're
limited
lucky they
Twitter.
didn't shut it down, actually.
Exactly.
They probably have a clause.
Yeah, and I mean it's more complex than that, but ultimately Elon said, okay, so we're going to rate limit everyone 600, 800. It's temporary. Yeah, the reason why he's saying it's temporary is because he's hoping that he can strong arm Google into just making Twitter work because everyone wants Twitter.
What? Is that really
literally it?
His plan?
Yeah.
I thought his plan was to migrate to somewhere else, cheaper or whatever.
Probably, but he can't. He doesn't have access to it. He can't migrate it without paying the bill. It's being held hostage.
He has no leverage. He has no leverage over Google, though. Why? Yeah. How is he going to strong arm Google with what? For what? And what's the reason?
It's ridiculous, and so that's why. And so he keeps saying like, "Oh, we're increasing the rate limit for people." The reason why he's increasing it is because those people are paying for their rate. So with the Twitter Blue, all of the funds for that. So one of the craziest things about this now is that Elon has been making all of these changes for the sake of profitability, right? Like he wants Twitter to be a profitable company. It has never been a profitable company. And so his idea was like, okay, so people will leave the site in droves, but the people who stay will make us profitable. Now the profit he's gaining from people who stayed and subscribed is being eaten into by the bills they are having to pay for the rate limit issues. So that's insane. And if he doesn't cave, Twitter stops working forever. But if he does cave, every single decision he made that made Twitter worse is now negated, even from a profit standpoint, because all of the money they're making is going to pay this bill.
Womp womp.
They still have to pay like 1.3 billion a year on
yes
for the on loan thing for paying.
Yep.
And supposedly
it's just insane.
And from what I hear leading into this big moment, he tried to like preempt it by making it so you can only see tweets on Twitter by being logged in, which led to
and that was
the entire
awful.
website losing its mind because every single news site on the entire world that has embedded tweets was then trying to queue the servers over and over again while failing to recall the tweets that they previously had access to, which led to them just doing it forever, all the time across the whole internet, which led to such a massive amount of that essentially Twitter making that choice, Elon making that change without actually accounting for it led to him like DDoSing himself. And so that only made the server problems worse.
Even more crazy than this is that when he rate limited everyone, he's not blocking them from making an API call. He's just blocking the call. Yeah, no, he's just blocking the call from populating. So everyone's sitting on their timelines going, why am I rate limited? Refresh, is still calling for tweets to load. So he basically just made the server load on Twitter increase 100-fold in a day. It's mind-boggling how fucking stupid this dude is. So
I cannot stress enough, guys, because there's so many fucking evangelists. This guy doesn't know how to do any of his businesses. He's not an expert at any of the things he owns.
I don't think there's any reason to take anybody who thinks he's smart seriously.
No, there never has been, but they just never shut up. They always want to hero worship the rich guy because he's like, he's a bullied nerd and I can be like him one day. It's like, maybe, but not in an aspirational way. There's nothing cool about what he's done.
I think there has been. I think it's okay to. Well, maybe people who are really, really sheltered can still be taken seriously when they say Elon Musk is smart. But I mean, I think maybe 3 or 4 years back, when his whole persona, his whole image was, Tesla did what all of the American car companies could not do. When in reality, what was happening is that Obama set up a system where, for example, Ford could. So basically, the way Tesla was kept afloat, and I'm oversimplifying, but basically every American car company was supposed to make a certain amount of electric cars based on their fleet. But that was the original law. But it was watered down to basically credits or whatever. Like what ended up happening was Ford paid Tesla to do the cars for them, the electric cars that Ford would have done instead. So what ended up happening is that Ford didn't do the electric cars as much, and Tesla did it instead and got a bunch of money for it, both from the government as well as from Ford and every other car company. And that's why Tesla was so profitable, and they actually, started being profitable after almost going bankrupt with their original Roadster situation. And the whole Starlink, is it Starlink? What's the company that does the jets that go up into space and then come back down again and explode?
No, Blue Origin is Amazon. Elon Musk rockets. What are they called?
I think it's Starlink.
SpaceX.
Oh, it's SpaceX. That's the one. Yeah, Starlink is the
internet.
The internet. Yeah, and SpaceX is kind of a similar situation because it gets a lot of money from NASA. But it's it's just a normal. There's a lot of companies like SpaceX. SpaceX just has a good marketing. But what I'm saying is, there's an image built around Elon Musk that whatever he touches and whatever here being Tesla and SpaceX turns to gold. And he cultivated that image very much, I think, and successfully cultivated that image. It's just that the whole catering to the internet trolls didn't go. It's just, why would you do that? Why would anybody do that? I mean, it's not as bad as that pillow guy that just like go all out into proper
pillow guy
conspiracy. Getting I don't know
the My Pillow guy, the Mike whatever.
Yeah, it's not as bad as that, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close. And so if people are even the least bit up to date with the news, I don't think anybody that still defends Elon Musk needs to be taken seriously. They are either trolling or they're just bad people. And if they're trolling, bless your heart. But if you're a bad person, go away.
I don't see much of a difference between either option at this point. Like, fuck them both. Suck someone else's dick.
The amount of time that I was mistreated in high school by people that said they were trolling, I don't care about that term anymore. It's so stupid.
Yeah.
I'm just ironically insufferable and making the world worse and making you not like me. It's a joke. It's just Twitter's been just a wild experience. There's so many strange quirks of all this. Like, you can still post links to tweets constantly on like Discord, for example.
Yep.
And so you could just see stuff.
You can use
that
VX
way.
Twitter.
There's a lot of workarounds to this whole thing that just make it seem really goofy. And incredibly, like, I would be mad if it wasn't for the fact that I think anyone who pays for Twitter is stupid, because you're already the product and you're already being like harvested for money to begin with. Like, that's the point, is that your existence is a profit for them. So paying on top of that is just wild. And I thoroughly despise Twitter Blue people. Like, the fact that they're boosted to being the top replies to every single thing makes scrolling down under anything completely insufferable, because it's just the worst. They self-select into having the worst opinions possible. You literally have to scroll past all the blue names in order to get to the first decent reply to anything, because they're just incredibly, like, it's so damning to the entire brand how every single person who buys Twitter Blue is just the worst human beings with the worst thoughts and just the dumbest brains. Like, they literally, it's just it's so night and day. The moment you get past the blue names, suddenly there's good replies to things. It's insane. But all of Pride Month, and especially the backlash to Pride Month, and especially like the Supreme Court decision to lash out against LGBT rights and so on, like, holy fuck, just every Twitter Blue person I saw was just openly celebrating homophobia at this point. So yeah, install Blue Blocker, just get a Chrome extension that auto blocks every single Twitter Blue user. That's the only way the site's even vaguely usable. It's just insane. But hey, in a mystical alternate universe where paying for Twitter was a neutral choice, and not like you just showing that you're an awful person actively in a way that's very consistently trackable, like the most correlatable data I've ever seen, basically. If in a world where I could feel bad for Twitter Blue people, I would be really mad that I paid for a website and it tells me I can't use it. Like, this is the giant this is basically the most damning thing about the entire thing that Elon just did, is the fact that he rate limited people to protect against scrapers or whatever, and like the usage of the website. People are paying for your website with a monthly subscription, and all that they got in return was a somewhat higher limit. They don't even get unlimited access to the website. You literally cannot pay to use Twitter. What kind of business is this? How is this a business? This dumb motherfucker.
The thing that you're hitting on here, though, is actually kind of interesting, because it's one in a very long line of issues here with Twitter Blue, which is that our good friend Illusory Wall and I were chatting about this. So many Twitter Blue users are shadow banned. Just a remarkable amount of them are completely deboosted.
Yay!
And you can easily check this. So you, like 95% of those people, I wonder if they would be paying for Twitter Blue if they knew that the person they're trying to get to notice them can't even fucking see their tweets, because their tweets are still deboosted, even though they're paying for presumably promotion. It is insane.
Isn't this the quirk where you get like if you get blocked by a bunch of people, for example, or you interact in certain ways, you just essentially become invisible on Twitter. Like, your posts can still take off. Like my account. Supposedly, if you type my stuff in, you don't it doesn't suggest me in the search bar.
Yeah, it doesn't suggest me either.
Username in, but obviously, like my posts take off and get like 1,000 likes and so on, which is more than they ever used to. So like that's a whole thing. But like there's from what I understand on Twitter, there's a quirk where if every time somebody blocks you, you become a little less algorithmically favored by the website. And so something like Blue Blocker, people mass blocking every single prominent blue checkmark person means that they end up becoming they get the opposite of the intended effect of paying for the way's
it's algorithmically unfavorable to be blue.
They're getting unboosted. So right now, paying for Twitter seems to be actively bad for your ability to get reach, and you don't get unlimited access to the website right now when it's rate limited. The only thing that it seems to give you is that it pins your comments to the top of replies. That's it. Like when you look at the replies of something, it's like, here's 10 blue people before you get to a single not blue person. Like they're clearly just in a category that's just sorted above the other ones, and it's awful. That's what pushed me over the edge, is that every single piece of news about like queerness or so on, every single time it's like, oh, a bad thing happened, good, and here's why you should stay away from kids and blah blah blah, and it's like 30 replies like that, and they're all blue. And I'm like, that's what broke me, is like every single news tweet is just homophobes being all the top replies because they pay for Twitter.
Because
it's just so
Elon bros. That's it's so weird that Elon Musk should just set up a Patreon. That's all he needs to do. He doesn't need to buy Twitter. Set up a Patreon. That's fine. You know, they call it the $8 a month
Patreon for Twitter.
No, not for Twitter, just for him. It's just like, you want to pay
Elon Musk
for Elon Musk. Yeah,
I mean,
it's just like
funny. Honestly,
to ruin
with his cult of fans, he probably should just have a Patreon akin to like Jordan Peterson and whatnot. Like, it's just a Patreon that's like, you like me for some reason. I won't give you anything back. Give me money for some reason. It's just that's why you paid for Twitter, right? You just were in the cult of Elon and wanted to give me money for some reason. Me, the guy that has all the money already.
Now that everybody is blue, how is the whole, like, can I just make an account that is blue and is like the president of the United States with a blue check mark?
Yes.
That's still going on? People can impersonate.
Allegedly, a memo leaked from Elon himself like last week where he was mad that there was no way to block people from impersonating him with Twitter Blue. Just think about that for like
just
2
him.
minutes.
Did that. Impersonate him.
Yeah. He was very mad. He was like, why can't we do this? And they were like, there's no way. There are other people on the planet named Elon, sir. And he was like, that's not fair.
But you also, it's also like, you personally decided that it was this. You're like, all you had to do was be like, there's a subscription service. It makes you, you're gonna be a premium tweeter. You get a premium badge for paying for premium tweeter, and then you get your premium perks or whatever. But specifically, because of the conservative grudge against verified accounts in the before days, which people are basically won't remember now, because all they can think about is the new wave of verified people. It used to be a conservative talking point over and over again that blue check marks were this evil liberal mind virus taking over the internet, and so this was all about sticking it to the blue check marks and quote unquote democratizing it by of course charging for it when it used to be free, and so now it has to be a blue check mark, and it has to be called verified, even though it verifies nothing and in no way shows that your identity is what it is. And so he just fucking throws it to everybody. It's like, congratulations, you can be quote unquote verified. You can call yourself McDonald's and you're verified McDonald's, even though that's not what any word means. And it doesn't have the status it used to, except for the 1 week of people being confused and causing massive news stuff to happen by impersonating major corporations and ruining their stock values and stuff, which was fantastic. Just incredible experience. Now it's just pointless, and like it doesn't even accomplish what it does. Like, now that everyone knows after a few days, it's ultimately pointless, because you can just highlight it and it just says verified, this person paid for Twitter. Like, it has to tell you what verified means, and in this case it means it's not verified, it's just fake verified, it's mouse over verified. You shine your light on the invisible ink and it's like, just kidding, I just paid money. But he also keeps forcing verification on other people that don't want it. Like, Hank Green has verification whether he wants it or not. Drill kept getting verification.
Wait, does it say that Hank Green paid?
I don't know if it specifies.
It did.
I think it lies. Yeah, I think it basically pretends that he's paying for it, even though it also says he's had it since like 2018.
It is, yes. And so there is a class action lawsuit being planned for this, because it is false advertisement. It's using them to advertise.
So he uses high profile Twitter accounts to pretend that people are buying this product that actually are influencers on some level, and they're actively rebelling against it. Like Drill, that one like comedy account, keeps getting verified, and he keeps changing his name to get rid of the check mark, and it keeps coming back. Like, they keep re-verifying him manually when he's actively trying to get rid of it by changing his name, because that's how you break verification, because the only tenuous idea that it's verifying anything is that your name is supposed to be correct, and changing your name is supposed to break that. So he keeps changing it over and over again, and they keep giving it back. It's like, this is such a shit show. This is so fucking embarrassing to just everyone involved in this company. It's
one of the funniest things about this whole scenario too is that ultimately, and it's just kind of insane to even think about, but Drill quit Twitter last night because of this, and his last tweet was a picture of Elon Musk jerking off onto the floor and shooting himself in the head at the same time.
Oh yeah,
so he's getting
tweet,
banned.
I saw that.
Yeah, he's gonna get banned for sure at this point, but good for him, man. What a hero.
Yeah. Here's my pro tip to all of the furries out there that want to browse furry art on Twitter, but they can't because their website doesn't work at all. Go to your favorite furries accounts that you have memorized and just can find without having to browse Twitter, because Twitter doesn't work. Get to their profile, click on their likes tab. You can just scroll forever. It doesn't limit you.
Yeah.
So like the whole point is to make you not like retrieve tweets. You can just browse forever in someone's like tab unless they fix it or something, which completely stops the whole idea that they're stopping you from recalling tweets, because those aren't like things you saw today just being shown again. It's somebody else's likes, but yeah, their likes are not rate limited, so you could just sit there and scroll all day. So what Leland did is that he functionally turned Twitter into shitty Tumblr, where you just browse somebody else's blog essentially, because that's just. If I wanted to see art yesterday, yesterday was the day it first started, I just had to just click on like Mash or Jimmy or someone and just start scrolling down their likes. So I'm like, all right, well, here's art at least. This is not art, because I'm getting absolutely nothing on the actual feed. And this is on a website where you can't browse your own profile. like your own profile won't show its tweets if they were
well, you
in
can
the
see
600.
your likes though.
Yeah, you can browse your own likes, but you can't browse your own tweets. It's just it's so stupid. It's so frustrating. It was to just to illustrate how broken this experience was, like for posterity, and also for anyone who just didn't experience it yesterday, and who knows what it'll be like today or tomorrow or day to day. It's a moving thing, I'm sure. This website was so unusable but still half functioning that like you got notifications for whenever somebody liked your posts, and you would get reply notifications. So if you're in your notifications, you would see replies to your posts. You would then click on the reply and it wouldn't load the thread, so you couldn't see what they were talking about your own posts. You couldn't see your own post that they were replying to for context for what the fuck they were saying. Like you could, and that, but but like you could, but sometimes you could click on the likes. So like sometimes you could click on the like to load your own post. So the only way to navigate through my own posts was for somebody else to like my post, and then I could click on the like notification, and that would show me my post, which I couldn't see if it was a reply, but I could see if it was a like. And then I could click the reply button for my own post, and I could add to that thread at that point by doing it that way, in which case I would type my reply to my own post, hit post, and it wouldn't appear because I'm not allowed to show any new tweets, so I can't see my own reply. So the only way I know the reply got sent is if I then later get a like on that post from somebody later in my feed. I'm like, okay, I guess it went through. So if I like wanted to just do a basic like add on to a previous post that I knew was there and that people were seeing and reacting to, I couldn't see it on my own account, so I just had to navigate this like insane series of notifications to then shadow post my own post to then like be like I think I sent it and just hope for the best. It's comical. It was honestly, as a one-day experience, it was entertaining. As just like it's a horrible way for the site to work, but the number of bizarre workarounds and nonsense that was happening the whole time was pretty entertaining, and seeing the ways that this just nightmare would manifest I was having a good time. Twitter's stupid.
Yeah, it's a bad site. I rage quit out of it because it made me mad. It was so stupid. I don't even like Twitter to begin with. I post dumb things that come out of my brain and random pictures, and that's all I use it for. And it's nice to interact with people. I really like seeing everyone like my tweets. It gives me a lot of validation. But at the same time, it's like, bruh, I'm not gonna put up with this shit ass literal man baby and the way that he handles this stuff every single day just to like interact with people. I like, the mass army of blue checks that I like don't even want to see, like there's just no point in it. So hopefully Twitter crashes and burns. That would be great. And I would love to go to literally any other site. It would be great if we could splinter back into, smaller community-based websites instead. That would make me super thrilled, because the way Twitter works now is fundamentally unusable and unhealthy and bad, I think, for the universe. And I think that we should be doing literally anything else on social media. One person in chat says, and I want to talk about this really specifically. Someone says, hey guys, what about Elon Musk's work on neurochip brain implants? Do you guys think humans with cyber brain implants will become our future very soon? Fucking no. That is a gigantic scam. It did not work.
Yeah. That is the worst thing that Elon Musk has done. There's like worse than the tunnel where they put a Tesla in the tunnel.
There's like no reason to think that a brain and a chip could even interact generally. That's literally...
it can, but not in the way you have
neural implants already. It's just that's not the Blade Runner future that people think it is, and Elon Musk selling it as such is like such a ridiculous scam. So no, it will not work. I'm sorry to break that truth to you. That is not something we will see in our lifetime. You will not be browsing hypnospace in your sleep, unfortunately. It's not going to work that way.
One of Elon Musk's entire bits is just to look at sci-fi where literally nothing has to exist in any realistic way whatsoever. You can just write things. You can just make things up. And then he turns around and like acts like he's going to cause it to happen. Like, I'm gonna make that now. He's like violating people's like fucking he's basically
IP.
yeah, like, not IP, like he's like violating copyright and stealing fictional concepts and then being like, aha, that's my invention, I'm gonna make that for real, and then lo and behold, he does not in fact make that.
Doesn't work.
And that's the outcome.
It doesn't work at all.
Because turns out, like, you can't just skip to the end product of like, aha, there was a holodeck in Star Trek where people could visit Sherlock Holmes, and he was like a complete AI recreation of Sherlock Holmes that could innovate in and improvise like a real person, and the entire world reacted like it was real, and like there was physical objects in the environment you could physically pick up and interact with. And I'm like, cool, that's a cool concept for a thought experiment fictional show made of special effects. You can't just say you're gonna make that and be like, haha, give me money, venture capitalism.
Well, you can do that. That's how the
no, you literally can do that. I'm just saying, like, that people believing in any of it is like,
yeah, that's
insane.
Yeah.
I'm like, he literally just lies. He's just lying every time.
He just lies. Yeah.
The person I just literally just read the response from just asked if we were reading live chat. Yes, we are reading chat, but we're also talking in a podcast, so it takes time to get to stuff.
So now it's 2 out of 3 for us. Andrew is not with us today, so I don't. Is Andrew still on Twitter?
I think he is.
Okay, so it's 2 out of 4 that have left Twitter.
We're all gonna slowly leave Twitter until I taunt Toaster back into place by sending him annoying things he can't see without logging in.
Keith is saying that he sent me too much porn, and I had to re-enable my account in order to.
That is
look
literally
at it.
what happened. He couldn't view posts because he didn't have an account on Twitter, and so that's what led to him re-enabling his account, because he disabled it back in like December or something when the Elon thing first happened. He's like, "Fuck this! I'm off this website."
Yeah,
and they started using it even harder than ever before, and then he's off again.
Well, yeah, it's just one of those things. You just you scream into the void, and the void likes your screaming, and it works really well for you.
Yeah, they like you. They're gonna miss you.
Yeah, I don't know. do they really like me, or do they like me making jokes about my bulge? I don't know. Probably the second one.
Though I think those two are intrinsically related.
How do you separate Toaster from the bulge jokes? Can one
hard.
truly live without the other?
Exactly.
No, the answer is no. But I don't know. Twitter's whatever. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes up next, right? Like the next internet website that everyone flocks to. I am curious what it will end up being. I'm curious if it will be as big as Twitter. I'm hoping no. I'm hoping Facebook dies too. I don't want to move to Instagram. I don't want to move back to Tumblr. Tumblr doesn't allow NSFW. Don't believe the hype that they're unbanning NSFW. They are not. Their rules have not changed. You are still allowed to have like tasteful nude art, like fancy photography that shows side boob. Like, you're not allowed to put like porn comics on the internet anymore. It's just bad. Like, there's just no community fandom site outside of small micro sites. And you know what? I'm pretty much fine with that. I want to go back to the old internet where fan sites existed and communities had specific locations that they congregated in. And I just don't want to deal with like this sort of stuff anymore. I don't want to have to deal with this screaming maw of the internet all congregating on one website.
Yeah. It's just I like the part where we have algorithmically boosted art.
Yeah.
And I don't want to lose that part. Like the market has largely decided, and people don't really love the idea of spending all their time on like completely linear gallery posting websites where there's just the front page that's the entire site at once, and then your personal notifications that's just chronologically sorted inbox of the people you've subscribed to, and no discoverability system whatsoever.
Yeah,
that's has its value, and it's definitely like, I would prefer to have Twitter but for art, where you actually have like a gallery feature where you can separate meme reaction gifs from your actual stuff you worked on and have it be browsable and so on. But we're stuck with two extremes where we can only use Twitter. That's just a massive mess of what lives and what fails, who knows, but sure is a lot of stuff to scroll through, versus like old gallery sites where it's literally just like, here's like those sites really only work as being like, here's the, once you already know somebody exists and you manually choose to browse their gallery, you can look through all of their stuff in chronological order and enjoy that. But you can't like find stuff and discover stuff, and there's no like continued browsing experience beyond the little spurts of like, I'm looking at this gallery now.
Yeah. I mean, there just hasn't been a good one. And like, and I've been looking, I genuinely search for, you know, these kinds of sites pretty frequently. And, you know, there's some good stuff, and we have like image boards and things like that, especially for the furry community. But like in general, there just isn't really a great medium-sized place to hang out.
Yeah.
And there are some cool...
the people have to be there, and where the people are and aren't determines the population, irrespective of the actual function of the site.
Yeah. And like, I don't think Mastodon is the answer. I think it's too difficult to use. It's too complicated. It's too closed. I like the idea behind it, like the usage of the site. And like, I think Blue Sky is up there as well in terms of like what could be a Twitter replacement, no matter how shitty Jack Dorsey also is. But I think it's hard. It's hard to find a replacement for what was the old internet's kind of forum culture, you know, is like the best way to describe it. Like,
well,
I don't think
Discord.
There's Discord, but that's also hyper small communities. There is not a single Discord server that is usable in the same sense that like a Gaia Online or a Something Awful was in its height, you know. And those sites still exist, but they're not you know, for these kinds of communities, and they have stricter rules and stuff. But my point is, we used to really have older, more mass communication that was slower and a little bit more gated. And like, I think about Tumblr in like 2011, the golden age of Tumblr, and that was literally the perfect social network, even with its issues. It was so good for finding things. It was so good for networking. It was a great social site, and it was a great what's a word I'm looking for? Curation site where you could like find and spread stuff really quickly and really easily, and like actually find stuff that you liked. But you know, once they banned NSFW, it really put a hamper on fandom works, and it's not even just a porn thing. It's like a community building, like how modern fandom interacts with media just got so hampered by it and so screwed. And then with promoted posts and stuff like that, it just changed the way the site worked so much. I don't think there's a way to fix that, really, and I don't think that we can exist in these hyper large communities anymore, because they cost so much to run and are such a hotbed for like shitty advertiser decisions. Saying that as someone who does market research for advertising, like, I think the era of these hyper large sites just it's not going to last. It doesn't work the way that we wish it would, and like the way that modern people want to use the internet, which is like with ad block and stuff, also just is counter to how these sites need to operate.
Kind of yeah.
So it's just like, there's just no getting around it. Like, I feel like, I don't know. I wish that we could go back to Web 1.0. You know, like I want to go back to the GeoCities web ring world. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Check out the webpage for my Counter-Strike clan. It auto plays.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
This infinite tiling background.
It's I don't think there's ever. We're never going back in any shape or form.
Yeah.
And like, that's actually the difference between Web 1.0 and Web 2.0, and the sort of evolution that we had from the sort of isolated, static, very webmaster driven or the type of updates would be done always sort of from a very editorial way. That's what you're referring to. and the evolution to what the internet started to be at the turn of the millennium is the reason why Web 3.0 is just nothing. It's the whole thing about we're gonna make it in the blockchain. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't like the back end of the web 2.0 also changed tremendously since the 2000s, and it keeps changing tremendously to the point where it's unfathomable to me. I couldn't understand how websites were run, the whole Apache situation back in the 2010 and around there, but these days I don't even try to, because the whole back end and then server and like I think they use, I don't even know the names of what they use these days for, like if you just run a website on AWS, which is the Amazon Web Servers or Web Service. I don't actually know what S
Web Services, yeah.
Like you need to allocate stacks and all sorts of weird terms that I'm not familiar with, because I only deal with front end. And the evolution of the internet on the back end keeps going. It doesn't affect what the internet is. It's what people do with it. And I think what people do with it is just it. Yeah, there's never going back. I personally don't. I think I don't miss the Web 1.0 days, but I think that's because I value, like I don't miss, I don't have fear of missing out too much in many things, which means that I'm okay with small communities that are just fun to hang out.
Yeah.
But I like, obviously I see the value of having access to tremendous repositories of news or art or music, things like that. And whenever it's user generated, it's obviously it's complicated. If it's going to be big, it's going to have to be either community owned, which it's never going to happen because capitalism, or the companies that own it need to be trustworthy, which is never going to happen because of capitalism.
Well, I mean, even community-owned sites, though, like the thing is that as you scale, this kind of gets to what we were talking about prior to the podcast starting, but like as you scale up, things become more expensive and more expensive, the more scaled up they get, right? So you can only support a community of a certain size. That's it. That's just like, there's a limit to how much you can do, even if it's community owned, because of how expensive it is to run just stuff like this.
Yeah,
like it's not.
What I'm saying, like when I'm thinking of community owned, I mean like DeviantArt, for example. It's a very top down sort of.
But
website,
that's a good example, though. DeviantArt slowly had to move away from being community owned, not just for capitalism reasons, but because the site was so big that they couldn't afford their hosting. So they started chasing advertiser money. It's not just a pure, we want to make profit thing. It's a, oh no, we hit a point that made us too big.
Yeah, it's economical kind of reality. Yeah.
And it's just, it becomes this issue where, like, yeah, maybe there are literally just too many people trying to conglomerate on these sites, and at a certain point, and this isn't me defending the capitalist side of this, where it's like, like they have to charge to make stuff. But like at a certain point, like, yeah, that's like the only way to make a site like this work is to charge for it, because it's too expensive to run otherwise. There's too many people and too many conflicting interests for this to function.
Well, I think that's a sort of roadblock that even many websites in the past, like Mega Upload and Destructoid and Demon, what was it called? I never paid for those websites, but I know they like started out free and like it was all good and like we offer this service that's so much better than the competition, and then after a year they start, okay, now we need to charge a little, but we're still better. And then, they eventually fade into obscurity or go bankrupt altogether.
I mean, I think the fact of the matter is there's just never going to be a free, fully accessible website that is good. I mean, I think that's like especially for social networks. And that kind of gets to why I miss Web 1.0, which is that I've talked about this a lot, but the internet used to be a destination. It used to be a place we had to spend time and effort to access. You couldn't just pull your phone out of your pocket, open an app, and type your shitty opinions out into the void and then close it as if it has zero consequence. Like, it's just not how the internet used to work. It used to be a thing that you needed to like use your phone line to access. You couldn't accept calls anymore when you were running on it. You had to know how to navigate. You had to know a website's name to go to it because search engines weren't as good as they are now. And for a long time, straight up did not exist. Like, you had to have navigation skills to use the internet, which meant the people who were on the internet were the people who wanted to be there and the people who knew how to use it. And so, like, if you wanted to have a website, cool, you could make a website. You got to learn how to make a fucking website. You couldn't just go to Squarespace, throw a template up, and scam people into buying from your shitty stolen art Redbubble site. And that's not to say that scams didn't exist on the internet. They did. But, like, the barrier to entry was high. And what that means is that there was a very large filter towards who could get in and who could not. And there are bad reasons for this, and there are good reasons for this, and there's good consequences and bad consequences for this. But for lack of a better word, like, the internet was gate kept. And I'm saying this in the academic sense, not the shitty fandom Discord sense of like gatekeeping, but like, it is easier to self-select into engaged communities when there is a barrier of entry gatekeeping out the people who are going to be toxic and problematic to those communities. And how does this apply to Twitter, right? Twitter is a site of massive scale where everyone is talking, everyone is screaming. It is almost impossible to differentiate people who are knowledgeable from people who are not and who are just kind of taking the piss. It's impossible to determine who's a troll and who's sincere. It's impossible to determine just what the fuck is going on ever. It costs a shitload to run, and it's just horrible for everyone's mental health because, like, you have an anti-vaxxer screaming at a actual scientist who knows what they're talking about, and there's no differentiation in the algorithmically between what one is saying and what another is saying, right? That's a problem. But back in the day, you wouldn't have nearly as much of that because using the internet was something you had to actually put effort into doing and kind of cost you something to do. And that is not the way it used to, or that's not the way it is anymore. We put phones and computers in our pockets, and we completely broke down the barrier between the real world and the wired. And all of a sudden, the internet became fucking garbage. And it was like almost overnight when, you know, the 2010 era of Facebook moms started, where every single person suddenly started getting on Facebook, and your parents started getting Twitter. And you just, that is when, like, the fan site and the community-driven website kind of stopped functioning because the scale suddenly exploded. And it's unfathomable now. I remember back in the day in like 2005, I was using Gaia Online as like a fifth, sixth grader, something like that. And Gaia Online was the biggest forum on the internet because it had 1.2 million users. Can you imagine a website with 1.2 million users being the largest thing on the internet anymore? That's fucking unbelievable. That was such a small number. But now Twitter has like 2 billion users, and like that was not a thing you could even imagine back in the day. Or like, you know, and like, yes, obviously, as more people, you know, use stuff and things become more accessible, the scale will increase. But like, at a certain point, I don't know if that's a good thing. And I miss the days of when the internet was harder to access and people had to self-select into doing it, because it was honestly just a less awful place to navigate back in the day by comparison.
Yeah, I think I understand where you're coming from. I disengage a lot with the modern
I felt
day
the
internet.
Facebook thing in my soul. Like I remember being on MySpace, and it was like this weird, like you had to go to other people's profiles to interact and then like actively seek out interactions. Like it was very much like, and it had like, it was like built in to have an extra layer of like barrier to it essentially, which was a weird choice at the time. Like that's how MySpace worked, was like you have your own blog essentially, and all interaction pretty much comes from choosing to go to other people's blogs basically. So then Facebook coming in and having the wall, as it was called I think at the time, was this like the feed that we're used to now on like Facebook and Twitter and so on. Like that was a new idea. It was like, here's this unified location, Facebook's the wall that has all of the things people are posting in some kind of order. And so it becomes this like collective experience, was like a cool different way of being able to like share YouTube links and like talk to people in a more like broad way amongst your friend groups and so on. And then there was just this very stark like noticeable drop where like it went from being this thing that all of your high school friends were all on at the same time to being the place where your parents and your grandparents were suddenly on, and everyone else was just trying to run away, because now it's like all of the like, not even just like, oh, I'm charmingly old and don't know how to use this very well, it quickly turned into like horrifying political opinions and fucked up discourse, and also the sense that you're being observed in what felt like a private place, because now all the fucking people that you specifically were there not to interact with were also there, and it's just, it became a completely miserable sight. And it's like, and also like these people were so, because they didn't grow up on the internet, they were so bad at being on the internet that they often like were the most vile types of people, as far as like forgetting that the people they're talking to are human beings that they literally know in real life, and would say like vicious shit. So like the number of times that I had to deal with like people I knew in real life that are from older generations just saying absolutely awful stuff to me on the internet, and then I'm supposed to like make nice with them when we show up in person again, as if those were like separate, as if we're not the same people that were just interacting. Like I just deleted my account eventually, because I could not handle how many stupid fights I was getting in with old conservatives that, for usually just pointing out even the most minor things, like it just didn't matter. Like my breaking point was this fight over, like, it wasn't even supposed to be a fight. I was just me pointing out, like, you know how they post the same fucking like propaganda memes over and over again that are just overtly false, like the black on black crime one, for example, and so on. Like there's the same infographics posted over and over again that were just literally just made up images full of nonsense text usually, but even if they were based on any level of statistics, they were just making a false argument. And this one was juxtaposing assault rifle deaths in the United States versus deaths caused by medical malpractice. And I'm like, I can't believe I have to explain why this isn't a comparison that makes any sense, but here we go. And me doing that, it was like a breaking point where I got so viciously attacked, like for me as a person, not just like what I said, but like me, people just all the acid pouring out and people just being furious with me when they're people I knew and I was supposed to be nice to in the future and shit. And I'm like, you guys are not ready for the internet. This is just horrible. And that was the beginning. Like I left Facebook, and all those people, with all the young people gone now, or unchallenged, and even going further and further into all their creepy little like Facebook groups that are all just spewing anti-Semitic shit day in and day out, and like because it's like a propaganda machine specifically for, it's like perfectly tuned for these older minds that do not know what they're doing on this internet, and just get sucked into stuff and believe everything that they read. I watched just a whole series of people that were like 50 plus just get warped, like comically like propagandized, and just started believing insane conspiracy theories, and that's how, and like getting sucked into like Alex Jones and Project Veritas and all this other stuff, and it worked so effectively. Like, I watched the internet turn into a cute place where you share badger on Facebook to being like fucking horrors beyond comprehension that ruin family bonds, and that was not progress. Like, the internet did not get better. It has not been getting more advanced and more impressive. It's only been getting worse over the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy too, because I think about this aspect of it pretty frequently. But like, again, the internet, by nature of being a place that you had to spend time to access and put effort into accessing, it wasn't reality. When I was a kid growing up, and like, yeah, there was horrible shit on the internet, like 4chan. I was there in the early days. Like, I saw all the terrible shit that was there. This is not to say that the internet did not have problems back then. It did. It was awful in a lot of similar ways, but it was also mitigated by the fact that it was a very not real space. What do I mean by that? You had to go to a location, to a terminal, to access the internet. And because of that, there wasn't a connection between really who you were or what you were doing in the real world with what you did online. I would go and be a different person online, for lack of a better word, than I was in real life. And when I got off the computer, that person did not exist anymore. Like, the person I was in reality, IRL, was very different than the person I was on the computer. And this wasn't like me masquerading or anything like that. It's just, it was a completely different form of socialization. You did not act in the same way as you do now. And that disappeared when all of a sudden everyone could just be clued in all the time to what was happening on the internet. So the internet stopped being its own location and instead became like overlaid on top of reality around us the moment smartphones became popular. So instead of it being like, oh, I read this article on IGN, here's this reviewer's take, it became, this person is saying this right now to me. And that is a huge difference in how you interact and how you exist on a mass global communication network. And yeah, things like Twitter and the internet have done a fantastic job for allowing things like political disobedience and unionization
and political education in many
exactly
well.
Advocacy and stuff. All that stuff is great, but it comes with the large caveat that the average moment to moment experience of the internet is now great. All of the people that I don't like in the real world and don't want to be part of my life now directly have access to my brain and are screaming into my skull every waking moment of every day. And all I need to do to access that is look at the little computer square I have in my pocket that I need to use for every single thing in my daily life. That is insane. When I was young, if I went online and I found some site that had like neo-Nazis on it, I could just not go to that site and it would not cross over with any other site because the internet was decentralized and people stuck to their spaces. Now, if I go on Twitter and I go to look at my friends' posts and I look at the replies, it's neo-Nazis in the replies because everyone uses Twitter, including all the neo-Nazis, and all of them pay for Twitter Blue. That's fucked up. That is some seriously fucked up shit.
Yeah,
and like,
there was a period of time where like we had tiny micro communities of nightmare people that had no impact on reality because they were just on a different planet over there on that one website, and they just had so little reach and impact. But not only did those groups get so much worse through all the different morphs and versions of like 8chan and 8kun and shit like that, like that part of the internet just straight up just gave us fucking like QAnon. Like, it became a worldwide phenomenon that these people had so much reach that they could affect reality to such an extent. And like, it's brutal. Like no one can actually parse how this internet works. And it's actively making life worse.
Yeah. So long story short, that's why I deleted my Twitter, because fuck it, you know. Yeah, I don't need it in the long run. And like, would I like to be able to use Twitter and not think that it's the worst thing in the world? Yeah, that'd be great. Unfortunately, I don't know if that's feasible, so guess I'm just out of there. Find me on Telegram and Discord at Toasted Ringtail. There you go. If you really need access to my dumb thoughts most of the time, you can find me there.
I congratulate you on your decision. I think it worked for me. So I stopped using Twitter, I think a little bit before Elon Musk bought it. I don't remember exactly, but I didn't private my account, didn't delete it or anything. And over time, well, actually a month ago, I privated it. But you know, I just have not been using Twitter, and I think the fact that I can still go there if I want to, can check my notifications there's no notifications, but you know, to just use Twitter if I want to, has helped me not use it. It's easier that way, I feel. Not that I mean, I'm not
got the most infuriating liberal response. I just want to call this person out. I can't not. Completely agree. You can no longer hide or ignore the hate. It's always been there, just not in your face. That's why it's so important to vote and make your voice heard. Speaking as a queer person, voting doesn't do fuck shit. At no point in the history of my life has voting left in any way, because it's not the left. They're just centrists that aren't far right weirdos. That's all the Democrats are. They actively do nothing most of the time. In the entire history of being a queer person that votes Democrat, I hate to break it to you, they haven't done shit for me. All they do is not do worse shit most of the time. That's the best you can expect, is inaction. Like, the entire history of queer rights being advanced is pretty much exclusively Supreme Court choices made by non-elected officials. We don't elect the Supreme Court, and in fact, the Republicans will actively break rules and fuck with decorum to actively avoid even letting a Democrat president elect Supreme Court justices while they're literally the ones in control and are supposed to be doing it, and they'll just sit there and twiddle their thumbs and be sad little babies about it the whole time. Be like, guess I can't do anything. It's just. Like, Obama was trash. Every leftist, every fucking Democrat president is trash and does not stand up for us and does not care about us and literally just uses the threat of the right as incentive to vote for them while still not giving us anything. Like, it's garbage. It's all garbage. And now the Supreme Court is stacked massively against us and will be for a very long time, and we have no power to change that by voting. Voting will never change that, so we get to just look at a long future of potentially having our rights stripped away month to month, including one that was very strategically and specifically done on the last day of Pride Month just to fuck with us, just so that we get the message clear that we're unwanted and unsafe, and that they're actively targeting us and making these choices on purpose to target us as a community specifically, and that we have no power to stop them. There is no voice heard in voting. There's bricks in the future. That's the only way anything's happening. Voting is nothing.
Yeah. If anything, withholding your vote is possibly more powerful, because the Democrats actually can do something about the Supreme Court, because they can institute term limits, for example. They can stack the Supreme Court. They can... That's the two things that I know they can do. But they have no incentive whatsoever to do it, because the Supreme Court being as it is, and the overall narrative of people being like, let's vote to try to offset the bad things that exist. The more the things are bad, the more votes they get, and that's their whole strategy.
They literally benefit from the threat that things will get worse, because that means, like, well, you don't want the Republicans, right? You better vote for us. So they benefit from the Republicans behaving the way they do. And that's why we have this dynamic where every single rule break possible and every breach of decorum possible to get to fight dirty and do what you can to get what you want is being done by the Republicans exclusively. And then the fucking Democrats always pretend they're taking the high road and that we're not going to sink to the level.
They just do.
But
more
really
of
what they're
the
doing
same.
is they're just not fucking fighting for us.
Yeah.
They're trash. They're horrible people.
I think there is a moral versus an ethical obligation here as well, though, which is to say one must choose choices that result in the least harm while also taking action to disrupt the systems in place that cause oppression. So I think that is a more metered way of looking at this idea of like one must vote to get their voice heard. It's like, yeah, you should probably vote, but also like unionize and protest and throw bricks at windows
100%.
and get rid of cops and
100%.
and
100%.
demilitarize the police and do everything you possibly humanly can to cause change. But voting will not get the voice heard. You need to vote in the middle of protesting and in the middle of causing civil disruption and actually stand up for what you believe in, which is something that most people do not do because they think that we should just be civilized and nice.
The problem, I totally agree. Like the thing with liberal brain rot though is that it really comes from an honest place when people say stuff like vote and be civilized and play by the rules, because the rules are in place. And the rules are fair, and we can win if we do things correctly. The problem with that is that it comes from a very partisan is not the word, but I'm going to use it sort of in its root way. It comes from a partisan perspective of life, in the sense that it's like a club or it's like my team. It's the whole thing about. Did you guys see the Just Stop Oil protests in London? I think 3 or 4 weeks back. They keep protesting, and God bless them. But there was this guy, this cyclist dude, that showed up and was counter protesting the protesters. So Just Stop Oil was basically stopping the traffic, and they were like holding banners, doing a protest. That, as you can imagine if you didn't see the news. And this cyclist dude shows up and is like, "You guys are just hurting the cause. This is not the way to do it," because they were causing disruption and stopping the traffic. And the word there of just hurting the cause, the cause there, the cause is the team and the looks that we have, and like how acceptable we are when we say the things we say. That's the cause that goes in that person's mind, and not the cause of stopping climate change or reversing the damage that we have done already, or that's not the cause that goes in that person's mind. It's the being accepted for who I am when I say things that, oh, climate change is bad. Because I'm sure, because that guy was like, oh, I'm a liberal, but you guys are I don't know if he said liberal, but it makes sense to that. But you guys are hurting the cause, and I'm just like, you're not lying when you say you're not putting on an act. You're saying things that you believe, but you are just, your mind is just so disturbed by this sort of partisan mentality.
I mean, it comes from a perspective. Yeah, it comes from a perspective that like conflict is bad and all things are valid. It's just we just have differences of opinion. I'm sorry to break it to people, and this is going to be a tough thing to accept, but not all opinions are valid. In fact, some opinions are shit, bad, and poorly informed, and they can be wrong. An opinion can fully 100% be wrong. It being an opinion does not block it from being literally objectively bad and terrible. I'm sorry to break it to you. So when people have these sort of how do I explain it? Perception politics, where it's like, you're hurting the cause. You're hurting the cause because like we're being perceived negatively. It's like, we're going to be perceived negatively by the bad people with bad opinions who want to make the world worse. I'm sorry. Their opinion doesn't matter. They should not be respected. Their opinions should not be listened to. And it's okay to make them feel bad. Being in conflict with them is objectively the right thing for reality. Period. Sorry. Yeah. The heat death of the universe doesn't care that your grandpa is just a traditional guy who thinks we have different views of how the world should work. Doesn't mean that he's right. Doesn't mean his opinion should be respected. He's killing the fucking planet. Yeet him into space. I'm sorry. A lot of Nazis had to die for World War II to end. That's just how it works.
Yep. And not enough of them died, honestly.
It's a self-defeating mentality where you literally just like, oh, people take issue with this part of who I am or this part of my ideology, you know, the ideology that's correct. But like people say, people specifically fight against this little word or this little part of it. We got to shave that off to make the whole thing better, right? Like that'll fix it somehow. Then we'll like be compromised until we actually reach some kind of solution. Like we just got to keep shaving off every single thing that gets in the way. It's like, no, that's the part that's right. Like it dips into parts of both queerness and like the furry fandom and so on, where there's both elements where like whenever anything's weird or off-putting to straight people or to non-fandom people and so on, people always act like this is like with the furry things. It's like literally like I've literally seen takes along the line of like these animal traits. These are why people think you're zoophiles, and then like with queer people just existing basically like this is why people think you're perverts. This is why people think you're after kids. It's like that's just queerness. And people respond as like, I'm not even talking about outsiders. I'm saying like people within the queer community look at other queers and police and judge them because they're embarrassed to be associated with other queer people for anything that stands out. But the end result of that thought process is just putting everyone in a fucking suit and a button-up shirt and being straight passing until you're just back in the closet. Like they do not fucking understand what they're saying because they're in many cases it's like these deeply frustrating like 20-year-olds online that just do not know what they're talking about, and they're not ready for the fact that they are judged and shamed by society, and they are a discriminated against person. And so they think that any kind of thing that stands out and people object to is a thing that has to be fixed, as opposed to the society around it thinking that way about those people. It's just deeply frustrating to watch because it's self-defeating ideology that literally is just is queer people turning on each other when we're supposed to be on the same side, which leads to the ideology of being like, it's the LGBT movement. We're going to cut off the T because the T is the inconvenient part of queerness right now. It's the one, like the entire idea there is that conservatives are most heavily targeting trans people. So the worst queer people just tried to divorce themselves from that entirely and be like, no, we're the better queer people. We're not like the transes. And that's just horrifying. And they will just come mentality. For you next.
They'll come for you next. Yeah, 100%. It's the problem, I think, comes from that what you said. Like, this is why they hate queer people. Like, if you like animal traits or whatever, and picking on the most, let's say, disruptive sort of appearances or whatever, and just saying, oh no, you're the outcast, you're the weird one out,
we're not one of these weirdos.
Yeah. So the problem is, no, that's not why they hate queer people. They hate queer people because they're bigots. That's the reason. It's not there's no justification. They will hate you if you're like them.
That we've crossed.
They will hate you if you're like them in everything apart from just who you love. Like, you can just be exactly like them. If it is about who you love, they will hate you. There's no level of pick me that will stop a bigot. There's only absolute denial of that sort of mentality. You need to a bigot can stop being a bigot. That, like, I'm not saying that a bigot is a bigot for life.
All queerness doesn't matter. Like we're talking about people who get mad when they see a third option on gender selects, or they get mad when the phone tree says press 1 for English. Like, you will never be good enough for those people when that level of abstraction is still too much.
Yeah, it's because it's so silly as well. Like, on the other hand, from a pragmatic perspective, every single step away from heteronormative sort of behavior and presentations, every single step away from that is better for everybody in the community. And the backlash is felt for sure, but the backlash is a process. It's not like people are happy in the closet. You're not. you come out of the closet and it's the best thing that you've ever done, and you're happy for it, but you feel a backlash anyway. It's like, it's still, I'm not invalidating any one person's experience, but it's like, I don't understand how. I don't understand how people can just have this sort of. I think it's like looking at their own like belly button and just be like, okay, I'm good here. So everybody needs to be in the same page that I am or something. I don't know. It's really
because they
weird.
can't deal with the existential horror of the idea that they're completely surrounded by an immovable vast scale of bigotry that they can't process individually. So instead, complaining that people wear the wrong type of sleeves or whatever the fuck, like something that you can police an individual behavior, they can project onto that and be like, if that one thing was different, then we'd be accepted. That's just the one mistake you're making.
Yeah.
It's like that's, which is insane, but it makes it feel like a problem that you can approach.
And it's so much more insane when you actually look at the stories that are used against marginalized communities. It doesn't even have just to be queer people. It's racialized people as well, and women, and it's just like and poor people and disabled people. There's just so much propaganda, basically. It's like, so like, you think of any one story that people usually quote as a joke or as a justification for not really sort of going along with this kind of person or trusting that kind of person. You just think of the commonplace stories, like, for example, even simple things like that woman that was burned by coffee, I think of McDonald's coffee, and sued coffee, and was basically, there's an amazing video. I forget who made it though, but do you know the US case?
It's been like debunked and readdressed several times over at this point, because of how like that entire scenario was just it became a meme, a massive joke that
it became a meme,
misrepresented
100%.
it continually, and it's that people.
But that meme is used as
in the United States. That was a widespread, well understood, supposedly case that everyone was aware of at the time, and it was just a lie.
Yeah. And it goes back to the black on black crime statistics that you mentioned earlier, or the kid that wants a litter box in whatever school that was.
Yeah.
Or
it's straight, all lies. Or straight mothers throwing a party because they want to have some titillation and see an exotic dancer while they're all taking care of their babies, but they have to do it in a specific context of them like having a private venue just for people with babies, because people with babies are actively like not wanted in most venues because of how disruptive babies are. But these moms are just so bored that they want to have their like they want to have like their baby shower situation with an exotic dancer, and that somehow becomes about trans people and drag queens when there are no drag queens or trans people in the video, but libs of TikTok will just post that video and say it's drag queens coming for your children and trying to trans your children 1-1. Those are little babies that have no fucking clue what's happening around them and are not taking in information and will not be indoctrinated in this at this age. But also, it's just a bunch of straight moms throwing a party that has nothing to do with queer people, and it becomes a queer people problem because it turns out straight people are weird.
Like,
that's
I'm
how
not saying
propaganda works. So like, there's no level of behaving correctly when you don't even have to. You don't even have to be in the propaganda. They just make up people.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. It's just one of the things I think about here though is that like there is a difference, and this is something that I think a lot of people don't understand when we talk about this, is like there is a difference between being strategic about optics and being pick me, and you can easily tell the difference between these two by looking at the intentions behind what's going on. Being strategic about optics is going to a unionization protest and saying, here are our demands. We have made compromises to make our reasonable demands more realistic. So it's like, okay, maybe in a just world, everyone gets 20% royalties on a show that they work on, or, you know, whatever, making up numbers here. But we're going to go for 15%. That's optics. That's compromise. That's making strategic decisions. It is not an optically strong decision to be like, we're going to abandon trans people because we want gay marriage. It's like, that's not fucking how it works. There are very, very different things between these two. So be very careful when people posit themselves as being reasonable. Because being reasonable is basically the first step in the propaganda rulebook, is to present something else as unreasonable. There's a really, really great book out there. It's a political theory book. Let me make sure I have the... yeah, here we go. There is a book called The Eclipse of Reason, and it's by Max Horkheimer. And it is about how the World War II and the rise of the Nazis basically existed entirely by slowly shifting the goalposts in their propaganda, by projecting themselves as reasonable and by making reasonable accords and reasonable compromises. This is extraordinarily scary and extraordinarily effective because it's a very pragmatic way of shifting the Overton window and forcing people into extremism. So whenever someone suggests that they are being more reasonable or that they are making a choice for optics and trying to play strategically, you need to be very, 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 very careful about how you are going about doing this, because you're only one step away from radicalizing people under the guise of reason.
Yeah. And also, like, it's important to note that I don't know to what extent it's specific to the right, to right-wing politics, but as it is right now, right-wing propaganda tends to be a lot more comfortable, to try to put it in relatable terms, to be a lot more comfortable using words and using there's proper terms for what I'm trying to say, but I'm just going to say simple things. Using words and using arguments from left-wing sort of ideas to prop up their goals, the right-wing goals. For example, the recent abolishment of affirmative action based on race. Is it affirmative action? What is it called? Affirmative action is what you're thinking. Yeah, yes. Yeah. The Supreme Court in the United States abolished the possibility for universities and learning institutions to basically try to create equity among their students in terms of race, based on race, basically. So and basically now they can't use race as a sort of measure to tell who they're gonna let in and who they're not. And like, I'm not talking about specifically that like how to feel or how people feel about that particular thing. There's a lot more learned people that can do that. But my point is, in the text of the Supreme Court ruling, or however it's called, they say that, or they appeal to the notion that race should not be used as a means to dictate the value of people, right? Yeah, which is on principle is a good thing. Yeah, we shouldn't do that. Yeah, but so they will use those arguments to prop up the action that is deliberately racist, because what they're doing is they're impeding the universities from actually fighting the racist society that they live in and trying to create equity, because they're not preventing things for, like, for example, legacy admissions or people letting people of lower means or women. They're not preventing any of that affirmative action. They're specifically preventing racial affirmative action. So it is a specifically racist ruling because it's based on the race, and not generalized as preventing affirmative action altogether, which would, I don't know what the implications of that. But my point is, right-wing propaganda uses left-wing talking terms, talking points. Yeah, well, it's just the appropriation of discourse in a way. Appropriation, that's the term. Yes. Yeah, it's like, the idea. Go on. Sorry. I've been reading a little bit about the fascist regime that Portugal had and the perception that some historians have, and some historians have been studying and all that. So there's contention in defining the regime as fascist, because fascism obviously it's a very complicated political movement, and something can be fascistic without being fascist and stuff like that. So and obviously our regime lasted beyond the Second World War, which also affects a little bit of the optics that it was forced to take. But specifically, and we were talking about race, so specifically that, I think the general perception, or not the general perception, but some historians look at our regime and say that it wasn't an overtly racist regime, or it wasn't based on or race wasn't a major point of the ideology. And while that obviously, that has its limitations, and I'm not accusing any historians of just saying this outright without limitations, because any capitalist system is racist by default, and obviously we had colonies, so obviously racism comes in there as well, and a bunch of other things going on. But one of the things that our I don't know his role, but basically the prime minister, whatever is the leader, Salazar. One of the things he said, I think multiple times, is specifically in the terms of we should not look at the person's race to judge their value, and in Portugal, people of every color are valued, and there's no room for discrimination and things like that. And he would say this outright multiple times in not necessarily in speeches of it wasn't at the forefront of his arguments, but it was definitely raised as a defense of accusations of racism. But the truth is, we have our major holiday here in Portugal, which I believe, I don't remember it's the 10th of June. That's the one. Now it's just called the Day of Portugal. It was called the Day of the Race, and we had a very generalized sort of understanding of the Lusitania. Well, I don't know the term in English, but it's basically the Portuguese race. So there was like this myth built around Portuguese people as sort of a breed apart, and racist, certainly racist talking points were used, but very much a racist framing around our nation was created in the mythology of the fascist regime. And what I'm trying to say, and I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent here, but what I'm trying to say is sometimes it's like you need to look very, very much past the words to see the roots of people's ideology, because they will just deny. It's like Tim Pool saying he's left wing because he doesn't. I don't know. It's all a game of words a lot of the time. Sorry, I went on a tangent, but I've just been mired. I've been looking. Yeah.
Funny. I mean, it is what it is, and like I think that it's one of those things that it's just one of those things where I think, unfortunately, we're stuck in a political situation where people who are very easily manipulated but eager to participate are worsening the discourse and making it harder to understand and follow what is happening. It's a media literacy issue, and in general just a literacy issue.
Oh yeah.
And yet the very forces we are trying to fight against with our discourse are both co-opting our discourse and using the chaos caused by the wide access of this discourse to just make things worse. And that is the way it is. But that's a thing that's happened throughout all of history, but it's just genuinely remarkable that it's continuing to happen and we are still falling for it, which just sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
everyone in a good mood.
No, for me, for me, it's not. This is. I sort of live with this realization every time I talk to people in real life, well, in meet space, as it were.
Yeah.
Serious question: would it be different in the U.S. if Bernie was president? If Bernie was elected president the first time, as in instead of Trump, yeah, things would be pretty different. Supreme Court would be very different right now than it is. I
mean, if Clinton was elected,
have a different list
of
rights right now if Bernie Sanders was president in 2016. In addition to not having an emotional crisis for a year.
I mean, things in general. This is also just one of those things where it's like, would things be different if they were different? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, they would be. There is, in as much as saying that, like, you know, the left wing, the current left wing party in the U.S. is basically just a centrist party. Us saying that they're not here to stand for our rights and not here to actually protect us does not mean that things would not be better if they were in power. We would be immediately less threatened at the very least. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean things would be better either. We're not political.
Even if we don't believe that Bernie Sanders would have magically radicalized the country and so on, every time that the right wins the presidential election, they like groups all the way down just get more empowered and more encouraged. And we had just overt outward bigotry acting confidently because of Trump and his platform and his ability to just be seen as the one in power and his side being seen as correct does make things marginal, like massively worse than it would be if he wasn't there. And so just the absence of Trump is better than Trump. So on that level, Bernie would have been a better candidate. But oh my God, considering the actual situation that the Supreme Court was in and how many seats were being filled very rapidly, Trump's presidency was disastrous for that purpose. Like on a scale that is difficult to comprehend, because that was basically more powerful than any actual president.
Yeah.
Like we just literally just lost abortion rights, affirmative action, and we're chipping away at LGBT rights again as a direct result of that happening. That was the victory.
Yeah.
So basically, Mitch McConnell is a bigger impact on U.S. history right now than Joe Biden.
Yeah, I mean, and I think part of it too right now though is, and part of this question and why it's really bad to frame discussions around this, like, would it be different if X won instead of Y? It's like I think when you think about things in that minute of a scale, you're missing that the conditions that would lead to that occurring would need to be so drastically different as to imply a completely different system.
Yeah.
And it's like, if for Bernie Sanders to have been elected, the entire lead up to that election would have needed to be drastically different. There would have needed to be drastically different narratives. And, you know, like, so even for the conditions to occur for that to happen, things would have needed to be different enough that we probably wouldn't have been in the same scenario we were in to begin
100%. 100%. If Hillary had lost the primaries to Bernie, Trump would have still been elected, because the Democratic Party would rather not have Bernie than have anything else. They would actually fight against Bernie inside, not the leadership directly on paper, but the amount of money raised for Trump would be absurd, even more than it was already.
And even more than that, like, I mean, and yes, that is absolutely true. An even bigger aspect to this is just like, public perception would have had to be so different that the conversation we would be having right now would be like the very discourse of American politics would have been different if in a world where Bernie won that primary. Like, we would not have even been discussing, you know, half of the things that we're talking about right now, because our priorities would be so different that we wouldn't be scared of things like losing our rights to the Supreme Court, you know, being stacked conservatively. Like, there are so many reactions down this chain that and that's not even to say that like Bernie is some savior. Like he isn't. He's like he is, as far as leftist politics
he would have been
go,
a consequence.
he's pretty soft leftist in terms of global leftism. Like he is not actually that far left. He is a social democrat. Like that's not actually that far left in terms of progressive politics. But
and somehow that's still too much to hope for.
Exactly. It was like the idea of that was too scary for American people, despite his, very high popularity rate. That doesn't necessarily translate to very successful campaigning and stuff like that. And I'm saying this as someone who literally worked for Bernie's campaign during the election. Like this was a thing that I was very clued in on. The state of the universe would have needed to be drastically different, and the things that we cared about would have needed to be drastically different for that to have come to pass. And so trying to frame this all around, like, if Bernie were president, would we be in where we are right now? See, you should have listened to me back then. It's like, yeah, but like that is in a sense like a fantasy that we need to like really consider 100%. The reality of the situation for when we're talking about like strategic political planning. And that is not to say that like Hillary Clinton was the right pick. I fucking campaigned for Bernie. I would have loved it if he won, and I tried my very best to make it so he did. But like the reality of the situation now is that in hindsight, even with hindsight, we can't magically predict what the world would have become like, because global politics are way more complicated than who wins the presidential election. And the systems that we operate within are so nuanced and so complicated and so reinforced that one change, even at the top of them, does not make a huge difference to every single possible bad thing that occurred in the past few years. Now, that is not me saying that we wouldn't be in a better spot. I think we probably would be in a generic macro level sense. That would have been the future I would have loved to live in. But like, we can't magically say that things wouldn't have just kind of been a baseline level of difference or higher than that in a different circumstance. All we can really do is move forward. And that kind of sucks, but it is what it is.
Like my perception of systems like the United States political system is that the president is always going to be a consequence of broader political trends, and obviously the whole thing about it's 1v1 situation, and like this is everything hinges on this one decision whenever a presidential election comes around. The work has already been done. The table has been set. The sort of what is it called? Chess. The chess board has already been working for years and years and years, and it's just another piece. And there's not obviously if Bernie if the question is if Trump hadn't won the election, then things would have been different for sure, but
things would be better. That's an easy question. The question is how. We can't say how they would be different,
I think I totally agree with you that he's not
Supreme Court
he's not
would be pretty different.
But that's the thing though, is would it though? Because part of the reason why we weren't able to fill those seats didn't even have to do with like Republicans themselves. It had to do with inaction on part of a Democratic Party as well during times when they had power. So like,
do you think that's a valid timeline? Do you think there's a world where the sad baby Democrats managed to not put any new judges into the Supreme Court for an additional 4 years?
Exactly. No, but that's what I'm saying is like, because of all of these situations. And that's not to say that that couldn't have happened. We totally could be in a better spot if we had good leadership and a strong, united, left party that we could do that with. But like, again, we have seen how things progress. We can't say one way or another if things would magically have been better and magically would have worked out, because we have been in situations where we were primed to make them work out and no one did anything. So like there are other systemic changes that need to occur outside of a simple presidential election to guarantee success or set things up for success in a way that also just did not happen. That's what I'm getting at, is like, in order for something like, oh, what if Bernie won the election to even have occurred, the drastic political reality we live in would have needed to be different.
Like, for example, abolishing the U.S. Senate. No more Senate.
Yeah.
No, I'm not kidding.
Get rid of the electoral college is another thing.
That as well. That's complicated. I don't have an opinion on that, although I agree. But the U.S. Senate is just fundamentally anti-democratic. No.
The moment I learned about the electoral college in high school, it sounded so completely unhinged. Because it was literally just like, so what we do is you vote, but then we give those votes to like a group of people that like hypothetically maybe in some scenario somehow might know better and vote differently than the will of the people that where they were elected by, to where their entire purpose is just to convey that vote.
Yeah,
it's like the Supreme Court actually ruled on that.
We were just so like
recently,
astonishingly,
they almost abolished democracy altogether.
It's like this bizarre like level of like corporateness built into the very concept of America's foundation, where we literally are like, yeah, the way we elect presidents is we have a middle manager for some reason, and no one can fully justify why it exists that way, or what it, or how it would ever improve the outcome of the election. And
we can justify it. They do justify it. It's just bad justification. The logic was
it's sincerely unhinged every time.
Yeah, like the logic was back in the day, like cities that had higher populations were unfairly weighted because we have 13 colonies, but like some of them are really far away and it's hard to travel. So of course some places will have lower populations. To make it all even, we'll give different representation to different areas, which is stupid.
Yeah,
it's always been stupid.
But it leads to two unhinged outcomes where, one, you have just a guy who is supposed to vote for people and can just change his mind, which is insane. But it's also like, hey, here's this whole state. The state has this much population. The state population is worth this many votes. Okay, that's some kind of attempt to equalize vote populations between states, which is its own kind of fucked up, where there's this idea where like the least populated state, the people in that state have twice the voting power of the people in California, but actually the people in the swing states have infinite more voting power than any state that's a surefire thing, which is its own fuckery mess thing. But also, we have individual districts for seemingly no reason that just turn an individual state's votes into a series of points where within an individual state, most of the people's votes don't matter. Like, we've done as much as we possibly can to reduce the level of democracy in a country that tries to call itself one, when of course it never has been. But like the fact that it's ever been the will of the people is like so comically obscured because of how many pointless rules there are between just the process of people voting and the president being elected. It's unhinged. There's no upsides to it as far as I can tell. It just leads to there being additional levels of strategy, of just like trickery, of being like, here's the two places you actually have to campaign, and here's the one demographic that matters this election, and it's insane.
And honestly, I think it will, I don't want to sound like a doomer, but the United States will die befor that state of affairs changes.
You know what? Because Doomer was my goddamn high school teacher giving us a worksheet where we tried to gerrymander a state to change the outcome of the election. That was fucking cursed. That it was that it's so simple and understandable how broken it is that you can do it as a worksheet as a kid is terrifying.
The reason why I say what I'm saying is the imperial nature of the United States, and by that I mean it's very top heavy when it comes to just the country itself. There's just so many things that depend on the country that the interests. It's not just let's try something different this time, guys. It's not just about everybody that is in power needs the current state of affairs to maintain its power. Not everybody, but the vast majority of them do. The gerrymandering happens on both parties, and there's a lot of like individual seats that are dependent on gerrymandering that nobody would ever try to do electoral reform. But on the other hand as well, like I think even though I think an electoral reform would not kill the United States or its imperial nature, I think that the motivations behind it being an empire means that it's just going to get worse, most likely, because that's the incentive. Is just to let's tighten things down, make it as predictable as possible. And I think that's why empires fall eventually. It's just that the incentives are one way. There's no sort of resetting. There's no sort of improving on that on things that are wrong on a moralistic nature, or from a moralistic perspective, I should say.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what we're arguing for, whenever we argue for democracy, even though there's pragmatic arguments, I think the most normal arguments to make are just because it's right. It should be the people's will, and we don't need to. Whenever we argue amongst ourselves, certainly, but even with other people, we don't need to go much further than that and just say, things should be democratic. So whenever we're arguing for electoral reform, we're not talking about pragmatic things. We're talking about moralistic stances a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But obviously,
the aristocrats.
The aristocrats?
It's fine.
This is where Keith ends the podcast.
Is it? It is a breaking conversation. Maybe it is the end of the podcast. I don't know where to go. Just drain now. Everybody enjoyed your sad boy podcast?
This wasn't a sad boy podcast. This was a Toaster is afraid of. Toaster's happy he's not on Twitter anymore, so that he doesn't need to deal with the aftermath of whatever people fucking quote in this podcast in 10 years when I get canceled for it.
This was the unhappy Pride Month podcast.
We can unlist the podcast. That's what I do. Podcast. I was just like,
dear God.
No, I don't want to keep saying that on the internet. Unlist.
You unlist the podcast? Did you have bad boy podcasts where you're so radical?
Talking about politics on the internet is just a problem, because no one, even people with seemingly good politics, have bad faith engagement in them and don't know how to read or listen to an entire thing because it's too long and they have the attention span of a fucking squirrel.
Yeah.
How to be American.
No, I was just.
Is at least
it's easy to be
I'm free.
Which is, at the end of the day, what growth is about, right?
Yeah.
I've just been playing a fun game this entire time called Get My Blue Blocker number as high as possible. And my new meta is I go to the New York Post and just open the replies to each article and just scroll down. And then I just watch my sidebar just fill up with another person blocked every 5 seconds, which is as fast as it can go. So I'm up to 415.
Nice. So I've just been playing Street Fighter this whole time.
Yeah, I'm just slowly purging the internet from my Twitter.
I have the Eclipse of Reason wiki page open.
I'm currently blocking all of the
You'd probably really like that book, Colonel.
I probably would. Yeah. I'm currently auto-blocking all of the replies to Hunter Biden news, which is a real hot spot. That's a real lightning bolt for people that I don't want to see ever again. That's how my evening is going. Looking forward to going back to playing Zelda.
It's that this time I save not manually blocking a bunch of people on Twitter. I mean, you're not manually blocking, but it's still a manual process in a sense.
That I opened the tab and scroll to the bottom of it, and then it's just running.
Yeah. But I've spent more than 3 or 4 hours blocking people over the course of my Twitter. Like as a total, I should say.
That's why it's the dumbest thing ever when people are like, I've never even interacted with this person. Why have they blocked me? I'm like, fucker, we can see each other.
Yeah.
The reason is
we see plenty of people we're not interacting with, and I'm like, I don't want to see that person ever again. It's a normal response.
For my thing is, I don't want the people who I reply to to be exposed to you. So it's a safety issue. Like other people I like and follow, I don't want them to have to deal with you, so I block you and I do my bit.
I think we should just unshame blocking, because sometimes I'm not even going to be nice about it. I'm not even going to try to justify it. Sometimes I just see the stupid shit people post and I go, you're dumb and I don't want to listen to you. So I just block you. Sometimes it doesn't even matter. You might be the nicest person. You might be
it doesn't even have to be like active homophobia. It's literally like, oh, they recycled the boat animation in God of War 2. I'm like, blocked.
You're exactly.
Too stupid
like,
to be
I don't want to listen to you. I'm sorry. Like, that's not what I'm here for. Exactly. Like people will just like post something. They'll be like, I'll go to the movies and I'll see something and I'll be like, this was an okay movie. And then they'll post on Twitter like, this movie was the worst movie I've ever seen. And I'm like, I don't need this in my life. Goodbye. And you're just blocked. Sorry. Like, it's not a condemnation of you as a human. It's not like me preserving some echo chamber. It's just like, I just don't need that vibe. See ya. Yep. Goodbye. Like, whatever.
Every time someone sees a block as a victory, they're just further advertising
they're sad
that they're just a horrible person, just unlikable, deeply irritating. Literally, number one reason I block people is celebrating that someone blocked them. Like, oh, look, they blocked me. Oh, you're blocked. I don't even need to know the context of this conversation. Just the fact that you're posting a screenshot of being blocked, like it's you winning or somebody being a coward at you. I'm like, nope, never seeing you again. Bye.
I think I have over 200 people on Discord blocked right now, just because I think their typing style is annoying. Like, this shit doesn't matter. Like,
the typing style.
That's absolutely
I'm just like,
I
hate the way you talk. Like, goodbye.
There are people in my own Discord where I'm like, I don't. How many people can I get away with blocking before it becomes a problem? Because I kind of don't want to talk to you. It's bad because it's a Discord for my own community, but I'm like, you're an emotional drain. I think
blocks on Discord are different than Twitter, though.
It is different from Twitter. It's different from Twitter because you're sharing a space.
I've been blocked on Twitter by a few people that I followed.
Also, Discord frustratingly shows you that blocked people are talking still, and just clouds your chat with a bunch of notifications.
And it shows up a notification
to the point where it'll even say that a chat room has new messages in it when it's just a blocked notification. It's like shut up. No.
Yeah.
It doesn't have new notifications.
That does suck. That does suck. But yeah, on Twitter, like the few times I've been blocked by people I follow, like eventually you just find out I just found out I haven't seen this person in my feed for a while. What's going on? And then they blocked me. Like, it's like, that's I don't take it personally because I have very few personal relationships directly with the people that I follow anyway, but I don't take it personally. But I am more sad whenever the answer to the question of, oh, what happened to this person is they deleted their account. I was more sad. And that's actually part of the reason why I stopped using Twitter, is because just so many people kept leaving.
Colonel's sad I deleted the account that I post my bulge on. I'm sorry, Colonel. I didn't mean to depress you. I know you're so sad that I'm not posting the pictures of myself in underwear anymore. It's okay. I'll send those directly to your inbox from now on.
At least 1,000 people are currently finding out they missed out on Toaster's AD, and they're like, wait, what? That's the moral of this story.
Stupid.
That's what this podcast is ending on.
That's the end of the podcast. Goodbye, everyone. Think about everything you missed.
Mm-hmm. All of the things.